I always found it fascinating in what ways a completely unaided human with no spacesuit or necessities of any kind would die in various environments outside of the relatively protected confines of Mother Earth. How would an unaided human die on Mercury? Well, Mercury has virtually no atmosphere, so you would die of asphyxiation very quickly. Because of the lack of atmosphere, Mercury is subject to violent swings in temperature between day and night. And the temperature is very extreme as well. At night it can get as cold as negative 280 degrees Fahrenheit. And during the day it can get as hot as 800 degrees Fahrenheit. Which means if the suffocation doesn't kill you, you would either be cooked or freeze to death. How would an unaided human manage on Venus? Very badly. Venus is, to put it bluntly, similar to hell. First off, it's very unlikely you would even get to the surface as the winds are extremely powerful. Wind speeds of 74 miles per hour are considered a hurricane. The winds on Venus in the upper atmosphere reach 217 miles per hour. So your spacecraft would likely get torn asunder before it ever reached the surface. If by some chance you managed to reach the surface, death would take you in several ways. One way a human would die is by the pressure on Venus. The pressure is 92 times greater than on Earth, so you would likely get crushed into a pancake. Ignoring that avenue of death, you would die of respiratory intoxication, as Venus's atmosphere contains sulfur dioxide and sulfuric acid, and is mostly carbon dioxide with a bit of nitrogen. If that didn't get you, and it would, Venus has an isothermal surface that presents an average temperature of 864 degrees Fahrenheit, so a human would die because of the heat as well. How would a human die on the moon? Well, one way is through asphyxiation, as the moon has virtually no atmosphere, so there is no air to breathe. If that didn't get you, again, since this object lacks an atmosphere, it has temperature extremes, where at night the moon can get as cold as negative 387 degrees and as hot as 253 degrees during the day. Death would take you by day or night due to either freezing or being cooked. Also, the moon has an extremely weak gravitational force relative to Earth. A person weighing 200 pounds on Earth would weigh only 33 pounds on the moon, which is a huge difference. The first way an unaided human would die on Mars is through respiratory intoxication, as Mars' atmosphere is 96% carbon dioxide. If one survived that, a human could possibly die of systemic radiation poisoning, since Mars lacks a magnetosphere, so it has high radiation levels. A human might also die of dust storms on Mars, which are apparently quite common. How would a human die in Jupiter? Jupiter is basically a big ball of gas, so you would have no surface to land on. Death would probably come immediately through either the gravity of Jupiter crushing you or respiratory intoxication, since the human would be breathing in poisonous hydrogen in lethal amounts. How strong is Jupiter's gravitational force? Well, a 200-pound human would weigh about 505 pounds in Jupiter. A human would die in a similar way in Saturn as in Jupiter. This would be likely immediate death from respiratory intoxication due to hydrogen inhalation. If a human didn't die from that, they could also die from the pressure, the cold, and of course, since the winds are so fierce on Saturn, they would die from the physical trauma of winds that get as fast as 1,100 miles per hour. Interestingly, Saturn's gravitational force would not increase a human's weight very much at all. A 200-pound person on Earth will weigh only 201 on Saturn. How would a human die on Uranus? Again, we're looking at likely immediate death from respiratory intoxication due to hydrogen inhalation. And of course, being so far from the sun, death would come also by freezing. Death would come in similar ways on Neptune. Respiratory intoxication, and if that didn't kill you, death would come by way of freezing. Parts of Neptune are as cold as negative 360 degrees Fahrenheit. How would an unaided human die on the dwarf planet Pluto? This is again very obvious. It's extremely cold on Pluto, so the person would freeze to death. The temperature is around 375 to 400 degrees below zero. Pluto's gravitational force is 1/15 that of Earth. Mathematically, this translates to a 25,000-pound object on Earth weighing just 1,725 pounds on Pluto, which is a huge difference in that context. Pluto's atmosphere consists of nitrogen, methane, and carbon monoxide, so a human would also die possibly quicker from respiratory intoxication. It's difficult to say which one will be quicker, but a human probably wouldn't survive for even 10 minutes on Pluto unaided. What would happen if, for some retarded reason, a human went out into the vacuum of space without any protection? The primary way they would die is asphyxiation, due to lack of air to breathe. Great damage that can accumulate to lethal levels can also occur through embolism and arguably tissue damage from hypoxia. A human can survive for roughly 90 seconds in the vacuum of space, which is an amazing testimony to how extremely harsh and hostile the environment is outside the protection of Mother Earth.